together. Our presenter today is Rob Makalak, the president of MasterMine, and without further ado, take it away, Rob.
All right, thank you very much, Carnegie, and welcome everybody to the webinar today. There are a number of you with us today who are not already MasterMine users. We've got sort of a mixed group here, and a fair number that already are, and I'm going to try to give you information that helps in both contexts here. But I want to emphasize that what I'm here to do today is sort of give you an overall solution to, or maybe a vast improvement to doing deduping with the GoldMine database by combining it with your MasterMine techniques and tools that most of you who are on this call already have. So this is not just a full tutorial on doing the regular GoldMine merge purge process, for example, but really to talk about ways of doing the overall dedupe process more effectively. So with that, let's go right on to, for those of you who are not already MasterMine users, just a quick introduction to who I am and who we are. MasterMine is a provider of tools for managing GoldMine, specifically the MasterMine for GoldMine product, which has been in the markets for 16 years. There are nearly 1,500 companies that have implemented MasterMine. And we currently support and provide data management work for over 350 of those. And we are an authorized GoldMine dealer. Quickly about what the MasterMine product is, it is essentially a way of doing reporting and data manipulation and process management. And we're really kind of focusing on the third aspect of that this morning, the process management, or this afternoon, sorry, the process management aspect of it. Although with a good deal of data manipulation mixed in there, but for those of you who haven't seen MasterMine yet, you will see really all three of these come into play. And essentially what we are doing is using Excel to, tools that are built into Excel to work with the GoldMine data more effectively. And you'll see us doing that for reporting, and then what we call reporting, which is really extracting information into Excel workbooks that are user-friendly and GoldMine integrated, and we'll talk about the techniques for using that here too, specifically in the context of database management and deduping. One quick quote that we had from a customer earlier this year that I think really bears very closely on how on this fact of integrating MasterMine together with your GoldMine tools for merging and purging. Kim really sort of said offhand to us earlier this year, and I just wrote it down, that really it's hard to imagine for somebody who's used MasterMine for a long time with GoldMine sometimes thinking of them as two separate products. They really do belong very much together if you're going to effectively manage your GoldMine. Okay, so with that quick introduction, here's an agenda for today's webinar. I'm going to talk a little bit about and actually go through the GoldMine Merge Purge Wizard, really just not as a thorough training on how to use it, but just to set the context. Because really what we're talking about is how can you prepare your GoldMine data in advance so that your GoldMine Merge Purge Wizard will more effectively merge purge your data. So I want to make sure that we really establish that idea here. We're not talking about replacing the GoldMine Merge Purge. We're really talking about using your MasterMine tools to make that merge purge more effective. So I will go through that just sort of briefly to introduce it. Then we'll talk about the specific data quality issues that you have in your preparation of your GoldMine data before you do your merge purge. And then I will go through some specific tips and examples, and hopefully demonstrate as many of those as I can in the time that we have available. And then at the end we'll take whatever questions that you've got. As we go along here, of course, put your questions in the GoToWebinar dialog. You should be able to expand that dialog on your screen and put your questions in, and Carnegie will either answer them for you separately or pass them through to me if they bear on something for everyone. Okay, so that's our agenda for today. Let's go right to the GoldMine Merge Purge Wizard. And even before I talk about or demonstrate the actual thing in place, the GoldMine the wizard, I want to emphasize that it's really best to before you go diving into that, not only to clean up your data and prepare it, but to just understand and assess what is in your GoldMine database. For various reasons, not least of which is just to sort of understand, well, what's the quantity, what's the volume of duplications that I have there. In most of your cases, if you only work with your GoldMine data on a day-to-day basis, sort of record by record, you may have a vague idea that you've got duplication in there, but until you are doing some analysis or some reports, you don't really have an idea of to what degree is that actually an issue. And what kind of duplication is it? In other words, are we talking about complete records that are exactly matching, or are we talking about ones that are much more vaguely related to each other that need to be organized in a better way? So first thing is assess what's there. Now, of course, if you've got MasterMine, you've got some experience with that already, and I will kind of go into that first once we get over to the MasterMine part of this. In fact, I'll just sort of leave that idea there hanging for the moment, and we'll come back to it. So I'm going to put out the rest of this. So here's what I'm going to talk to right now on the Merge Purge wizard. So let's assume for the moment that we had already done some assessment of our overall database. We understand what it is that we've got in there. We're going to go in and actually I'm going to run the GoldMine built-in Merge Purge wizard and just talk quickly about, in particular, the weighting and how that works, and then some other issues related to your merge purge process. So with that, let me do a quick switch over to here, which is the demo database that we're going to work with. And so I'm going to go ahead and run the merge purge wizard. Now this is just sort of blindly going in, obviously without any prep work on the database itself. And in the merge purge wizard, what I want to kind of put up front here is you've got various choices about how you approach the merge purge. And when I talk about the preparation, I'm going to be relating to the things that we're taught, the actual steps of this. So I just want to sort of lay the groundwork for that. So the first thing is in the merge purge wizard. In the first thing in the merge purge wizard, you can choose whether you're going to be working with a predefined merge purge profile, in other words, and we'll go through setting up the profile here right now, or if you're going to be doing a new one. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead with a new one. In the long run, you probably want to set up a number of profiles that you can come back to and reuse. And these profiles, as you see as we define them, would affect how you use them. So new criteria. First off is a question of, are we actually deduping the entire database here, or are we just deduping a segment within it? And an important thing to know is that you don't have to dedupe the entire database all at once. You can take it in segments. When you do the segments, and let's say you set up a certain group or a certain filter of records within GoldMine that you're going to dedupe with, and just to take some arbitrary numbers, if you got 1,000 account records in your database, and you're only going to, but you're really concerned about 10 of them that you think might be dupes. If you think that those 10 might be dupes of 10 others that are among the entire 100, or sorry, among the entire 1,000 that are in the database, then you will need to do this merge on the entire 1,000, not just on that one group. And the reason I'm saying that is when you choose your filter up front here, you are not just choosing ones that will be compared against the entire database, you're choosing ones that will be compared against each other. So that's an important thing to bear in mind as you go into this, that you essentially want everything that you suspect might be a dupe to be in one bucket that you are pointing the merge purge wizard toward. Now in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do this against all contact records, and then this is really sort of the meat of the merge purge wizard. So what happens in the merge purge wizard in GoldMine is you set up a series of criteria that each of which are going to have a certain weight, and if the records that you're looking at that match with each other match according to the criteria you set up, then that weight gets added together with the other matches that are found, and if they surpass a certain level, then then the two records that are being matched against each other are considered to be possible dupes, and they will be processed. So I'll do a simple example of that where we add, let's say, the company field. We're going to do actually an exact match of company field, and it has to match, let's say, it has to exact match, and it will give it that a weight of 30 and a second field of the contact. So, and then I'll explain here why we're doing it this way. So, and let's make this be 25. Okay, so in the event that we have an exact match on company, and I actually left the soundx value on the contact name, so could have a slight variation in how the person spells their name. But if we have both a match on company and a match on contact, then these two weights will be added together, 30 plus 25, and that will be considered a duplicate. So if we've got company, two records that have the same company but different contacts in them, that will not be considered a match. And that's how this weighting here works. Now, note that you in your own individual context, you might really want to be deduping by company name, and you don't care that there are two different contact names in your database. You just want to bring both of those. You only want to have exactly one record in your database per company. If that's the case, you could do this without adding the contact here, or you could say, well, we need to have if we have an exact match on company, we know we've got a duplication there, so we'll call this 55 just to get it over the barrier here. But if we don't have an exact match by company, but we do have a match by contact, then we might want to add another criterion that would get it up over the duplicating weight. So for example, if it's the same contact name and the address is the same. Okay, so here if we don't have a match at company level, but we do have a match with company and with contact and with address, those get us up to the qualifying weight of 50%, and that's enough to have GoldMine return this as a match. And so I'm not going to go into all the details of how you might do this, but essentially you apply those principles to setting up a merge purge, so that when GoldMine runs through the merge purge process, when it actually processes the records, it will hit them according to this weighting mechanism, and then give you choices as far as what you do. So I'll go on to the next level here, and so here's your next choices as far as what happens when it pulls up two records that it thinks might be matches. And I'm not going to go into these too much because it's the weighting that I'm more interested in. But so here, if it finds two that it thinks are matches, it would go ahead and either keep the record that was created first and destroy the other one, or keep the record that was last updated and destroy the other one, or just create additional contacts from each of the two in each other's record, and leave it at that. Now you have choices down here for as far as what you do. So let's go back to the first situation where it's going to create the first record that was created. Now, if you choose the first one, you have the option of when it goes and when it merges the two records, it will actually go and merge the data from the two. And the surviving record, if the surviving record has data in a certain field and the same field on the other record also has data, then the record in the second record, the one that's going to disappear, will be lost. If the first record, if the surviving record doesn't have information in that field and the second record does, then it will actually pull the information from that field, from the second record into the main record. And so you have that that activity happening on the other side. And then this one here, prompt me before merging records. This is the one that I'm really going to focus a lot on, because this allows you on an individual match basis, so you can go through all of the matches that it finds, allows you to actually compare the records side by side and choose which one's going to be your winner, which one's going to be the survivor. And because of that, there's a number of things that I'm going to talk about in this data preparation stage that relate to that. So just bear that in mind. Okay, so that's really all I want to handle in the merge purge process. I'll actually go ahead and run this one. Oh, actually, let me do this as a dry run here because I don't actually want to change the data. And so I'm gonna let it do that, and I'm just gonna. We would normally save this as a profile and run this again, but I'm not going to. So I'll just say next, and we'll start this going. And just want to kind of get to this point in the merge purge where, because of the way I set it up, I'm getting matches. So if I've got an exact match by company name, but not by contact, I have a choice here, and the GoldMine, because I made the choice on the setup here that I would allow it to show them to me one by one and let me choose the record to keep or not keep, I can go through these. So skip to the second one here. I actually want to get to one where we've got a little bit more variation. So we've got actually three records, as it turns out, that say Banana Republic up there. And here's one that's an exact match, not an exact match on company. So there's a good example of where, even though it's not the same match on company, we did match by contact and phone number, and that was enough to make, or sorry, contact and street address, and that was enough to make it a match, enough to bring it up here to choose them. Okay, so I wanted to do sort of this whirlwind demonstration of the merge purge wizard, just so I could sort of set the context for the meat of this webinar, which is to really talk about the preparation, data preparation. Oh, and one other point to make about this is your choice about whether you do this method of either having it automatically just run through the whole database and eliminate duplications based on the criteria you set, or alternatively, whether you actually have it stop at each dupe and let you choose one. Clearly, if they are really exact matches, if you set it up so that you've got exact company and contact match, and you know that when those two are the same and you want it to go with only one of them, then you don't need to do this part of looking at them one by one. You can do, and I suggest that you go ahead and do a sort of a rough, do this in layers, do a rough dedupe that gets the exact matches first and runs through the entire list and does that first, and then come back and do a second or a third or a fourth layer that has what I would call a fuzzier kind of a matching logic. And the more the fuzzier your matching logic, basically the more human involvement you should have, the more you should be involved in deciding the actual what you keep or what you don't. Okay, so that was just sort of the last point about that. I'm going to finish with that and go back briefly to the PowerPoint there. Okay, so that was kind of my last point here, was on the fuzzier. If there's a fuzzier match, you should be more involved in whether you step through it or do just like a mass purge. Okay, so now let's get on with the fun part. First off, and before I talk about actually updating the data here, I'm going to put up a quick poll here and ask you just for the context in which you actually do your merge purging. And I'm looking for, there's our dialogue here. And so I'm going to put up a quick poll here.
It's up, Rob.
Oh, it's up already. Thank you very much, Mark Carnegie.
You're welcome. That's why I'm here.
So go ahead and just, it's really kind of a quick question. It's meant to get you to think about two main contexts in which people do merge purges. One of which is sort of this, where it's an ongoing part of an importing process. You know, you may have a situation where 2 times, 3 times, 10 times a year you import data from outside, whether you're getting a list from trade shows or you're getting lists from, you know, outside sources where you buy them or whatever it is, where as an ongoing need, you import the data, and then having imported the data, you need to do a merge purge so that you don't wind up with a big mess in your database. A lot of people use MasterMine generally just for clean up the data after it's been imported. We've got about 2/3 of people have voted here, so I'm just going to finish up this thought. The other possibility is, you don't really import data very often, but you've really just got a database that you think is a mess. Maybe you've just been using it for years and years, and you've had people using it in various ways, and doing manual data entry, pulling in information from outside, and you don't see this as an ongoing process. You really see this as a one-time, we just need to clean up our database. And so what I'm seeing here, and I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here. We've got answers from most of you. We'll go ahead and close it, and the result is 83% are really here not so much dealing with the data import process as really wanting to be able to clean up the existing database. And that's great. What I'm going to show you today applies to both of those, but I'm going to say actually especially to the second set. And part of the reason for that is you can clean up your data hopefully before you do an import. But once it's all in GoldMine, you pretty much have what you have, and then it's best to you'll have to grapple with it as it is there. So very good. Let's switch off back to the.
You're there.
There?
Keep
okay,
going.
great. I can't actually see what people are saying there. So, all right. So let's get into the actual tips here. And so first off, I want to talk about what are the related data quality issues associated with doing merge purge. Now, and fairly obviously, the fields that you're going to be using for your match, you want to have those be clean and consistent. And I'll talk about ways to accomplish that, but you need to think a little bit more expansively than that. So it's not just the fields that are going to be compared with each other that are at issue here. It's really the actually, I'm getting a little ahead of myself I'm going to actually just show all three of these. So I'm actually talking about the second one here, the actual fields in the records that you're going to be comparing. Those matching fields, those have to be cleaned up. That's probably fairly obvious, but I want to kind of back up and talk about that first set. So I mentioned before about sometimes you don't want to actually be doing a full dedupe of the entire database, just because you've got tens of thousands of records in there, and it doesn't make sense to sit down and think that you're actually going to get through all those all at once. Or because you've actually got some suspect. You've got a suspect group that you think has likely dupes in it because they were imported or some condition like that. If that's the case, you're really going to want to work in segments, and your segments are going to be based on data that's in, let's say, filters that you set up. One good sort of obvious segmentation might be take everybody in the same area code and just do a deep dupe against those, or take everybody that's in a same 5-digit zip code and do your match against those. Well, that works fine as long as you've got nice cleaned up phone numbers in the case of the area codes, or zip codes in the case of the zip codes, or even more if you're going to be doing other if they're coming together based on the date they were added to the database, or you're selecting them based on who they came from, which would be another field in the database, like your source field. And the reason I'm saying this is, even though you're not going to be doing a merge purge based on comparing, let's say, source fields, you might want to use the source field as your filtering criterion for inclusion in the match. And if that's the case, then before you get started, clean up your source field. Make sure that everybody has a source. Make sure that the sources are all normalized, and I'll get into how you do that here in a moment. So think in terms of not just what fields you're going to look at, for what fields are going to be matched up, but what are the criteria that you're using for selecting what gets matched, for selecting what goes through the wizard. And then the third set here is the information that you can use for deciding who's the winner, and that relates to that case where you're going to be looking at them one by one, where as the match candidates are brought up before you and you have to choose which one's going to be the winner, you want to make sure that, for example, if you've got two dupes if you've got two duplicate records and they're side by side, and one of them is the record that indicates that they're a client, and the other is a record that indicates that they're just a prospect, well, chances are the one that's the client record contains more useful information. You want to make sure that that doesn't get overwritten by the data from the prospect record. And if you're going to be doing that sort of choice, then you're going to want to make sure that your client record, that the field that indicates that they're a client, the contact type rec field typically, says client in it and it doesn't say something else, and the other one says prospect in it, it doesn't say something else. So all three of those things are important. I kind of belabored the point a little bit because I really want you to think more expansively than just the fields that will be matched up, that these other things come into play. Okay, so let's get into our specific data cleanup issues. So the first group of them are ones that relate to GoldMine housekeeping. And that is, well, actually, the first one where I just mentioned before about try to clean up this stuff prior to doing an import, while it's still, let's say, in Excel or still in the CSV file that's coming from. The more you can do your normalization before it comes into GoldMine, the better. You can use similar Excel tricks to what I'm gonna talk about here when I get into these on the normalization and such. But just kind of bear in mind, do that prior to importing them. I think that's probably fairly obvious. These other two have to do with your GoldMine database, things that you need to manage in the GoldMine housekeeping, regardless of whether you're about to do a merge purge. The first one is duplications of the contact to record. I'd say there's a pretty high probability, if you've had GoldMine for a number of years, if GoldMine's ever crashed on you, or if you did GoldMine syncing, or if there's a number of other contexts in which you wind up with duplicate contact to records. This requires a little bit of an explanation, but basically what we're talking about is GoldMine has two tables. I'm going to just be a little technical on this for just a moment. GoldMine has two main account level tables, contact 1 and contact 2. You have exactly one contact 1 record for each account, and theoretically each of those matches with exactly one contact 2 table. Your contact 2 table is where all your user defined fields are. Also where, well, user-defined fields and a couple of other built-in ones, but mainly user-defined ones. And part of the problem is that GoldMine once in a while will hiccup and it will lose temporarily the contact 2 record that matches with your contact 1. And then if you go to, let's say, fill in a field on the contact 2, it'll automatically create a new contact 2 record that will sort of overwrite. It won't overwrite, it'll
overlap it.
Sorry, it'll take priority.
Overlap it.
Yeah, it'll overlap it. Okay. Yeah, it'll take priority over the old contact 2. So you'll lose all the old contact 2 information, and now you have an empty new contact 2 record. If you've experienced this before, so where you see this as a symptom is if you do reports, for example, and you suddenly realize, hey, wait a minute, I'm seeing a lot more contact records than I know are in my database. Why does it look like that in my report? I've only got 350 records in my database, but or 3,500 records in my database, but I'm seeing 10,000 line items in my report, even though this is a contact level report. You probably wouldn't see that much of a discrepancy, but you would see a number of them. And so what you're going to wind up with is duplicate reporting against certain of your records, so it throws your reports off. That's one thing that happens. It'll throw off your dashboards. It'll sometimes act, and in this context, it can actually cause you to have big problems in your data matching when you go to do the merge purge wizard, and that's because the merge purge wizard finds these other contact 2 records, these old ones that have data that might cause it to look like a duplicate. And yet, when you pull up the records side by side, you don't actually see a duplicate because it's pulling information from a back-end contact 2 record that it's not familiar with. I don't want to go into that too much. I'm just going to say that is actually a fairly common problem in GoldMine. It's something that you need to address, and I'm going to go over and just sort of quickly show you with MasterMine how to find those duplicate contact 2 records quickly and deal with them. So I'll do a create here. So I'm going to create a new report using a template in MasterMine that actually specifically targets records that have duplicate contact twos. Now, you may or may not know that you actually have this problem in your own database already, so bear with me as I just do this as quickly as I can here. So I'm going to search for my template that deals with duplicate contact twos, and you can look for the word duplicate or contact two or C2, and it'll pull up that template, and then just run that template. So I chose it. I'm going to hit finish, and in this case, I think we've got in our demo database a very small number, or really only one duplicate. Yeah, so we've only got one. In this case, we only got one duplicate record. But if you had pulled this up, if you run this report and in this template, you see a whole bunch of companies listed here, and we actually pull the previous result field from the contact to table just so you can see or get a clue as to which one of these is really the most recent one. What you have to do from here basically is delete one or the other of these contact to records, and so the means, the technical means for doing that is going to be like this. You're going to drill down. In this case, we can actually see we've pulled the two. You see the duplicate, or we see the contact one information all duplicated between the two rows, but we're also pulling the record ID of the two contact two records and the previous result, and it might also help you to, if you want to show, which one was most recently updated, you could pull that field as part of this report, just to use it as a way of deciding which of these two records are we going to keep and which we're going to get rid of. In this case, I'm going to get rid of the first one here, just to sort of show you how that can be done. I'll get rid of, so what I want to do is get rid of the duplicate contact two record. I'm going to go to Updater here and tell it that we're going to delete the contact to record, and so I wait for it to come up, and so we're going to be modifying the contact to table. We're going to be, in this case, deleting, so we don't really care about that second part. I have not backed up. Good idea for you to back up, of course, before you do mass updates to your GoldMine database, especially if you're not really confident about what you're doing. But in this case, it's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to delete that record by looking it up by that record ID, and I'll take this actually off of test run, and we'll hit OK. And when I do that, that quickly I've gotten rid of that that unnecessary second contact to record. So when I go to refresh my report here, what I should wind up with is an empty pivot table, because there are now no longer any duplicates. That sort of data quality checking, this is an example of what I usually call an exception report, a MasterMine exception report, where when there is something wrong in your database, it shows up in the report. In this case, a second contact to record. And then as soon as you've fixed the issue on the GoldMine side, you come back and you refresh your report. Now when you refresh, you no longer see anything there, the issue's fixed. And then of course you could go on with your GoldMine de-duping process if that's what you were preparing for here. So that's the first sort of housekeeping thing that I think you need to take care of typically. And the second one is also sort of a major one. And this has more to do with if you've experienced the situation where you've run the wizard in GoldMine, and when you run it, it appears that every record in GoldMine is coming up as a duplicate. This is an issue that has been fixed with later versions of GoldMine, but if you had one of those earlier versions, and at the time you had that early, or even if you still now, you sometimes will have data that's left over from back then and that still needs to be straightened out. So this could apply to you even if you have the most current version of GoldMine. But like I say, so if you have this symptom where you go to do your merge purge, and when you run it, it looks like, despite whatever you set up as your criteria for matching, it just looks like it's matching with every record in the database, then likely you have this issue. And the issue is, as it turns out, is there's a single quote in the account number or in a rec ID. And I'm going to actually, I want to switch, what I want to do is switch back to the PowerPoint for just a second so I can show you the fix for that. Okay, so the issue is you've got a single quote in the account number or the record ID, and that's preventing your merge purge from actually running the way it should. This is just a technical end issue. So what I did was I just sort of prepared in advance here the query. Oops, it's going to actually show here in multiple lines. You can actually get this all in one query. And if you want us to email you this query, just send an email to me at the end or to Carnegie saying, please send me that query that shows me whether I've got problematic record ID or account number. And what it does is it goes and it looks for a single quote, and this kind of requires some special syntax here because a single quote is actually a part of SQL query, so it's not an obvious thing about how to go and look for it. But this query will actually return to you a list of all of the contact 1 and contact 2 records that have a single quote within the record ID or the account number. And if you've got that issue, then you're going to need to straighten that out in the data before your query wizard, your merge purge wizard in GoldMine will run properly. Okay, I don't want to belabor that too much. If you need that query, let us know, and we'll send that to you. Okay, let's get to some other ways of actually cleaning up your GoldMine database. This is going to be, so I'm going to move away from the more technical stuff and really talk about ways that you can sort of prepare your GoldMine data to more effectively run through the wizard, assuming that you've got the wizard working. Okay, so the first one is normalizing the fields. And remember I mentioned about for filtering purposes and for matching purposes, as well as deciding which one is the winner, you want it for all of those kinds of fields, you want to have your data well normalized. So I'm going to talk about all three of these. I'll just do these and then I'll switch over into MasterMine. So filling your key fields, whether it's for any of those purposes, using internal data logic, internal GoldMine data and logic. So an example of that I'm going to show you here is that one about that I mentioned before about accurately reflecting which one is the client versus which one is the prospect. I'll just use that as the example, although there could be many of them in your database where when you go to choose which winner you want to have it accurately reflecting which one you're looking at, so you don't accidentally delete let's say a client record or delete a client record in place of a prospect record, or delete a client record in place of, let's say, a past client record either. Okay, so I'll actually go through the process of normalizing a field to support that. Then there's standardizing on punctuations and abbreviations. This is a really key one. If you want your company names to match up, and one of them says, MasterMine Software Inc., and the other says MasterMine Software Incorporated, and you're doing an exact match, you're not going to find it. Even if you're doing a Soundex match, you may or may not get it, depending on how important the word incorporated is in the name of the company. So it's best then to standardize your database so that, for example, everything that says incorporated you should change to say Inc. Now that sounds really obvious, but how do you go through a database of 50,000 records and change the word incorporated to Inc. in all of them? Well, I'll show you some of that. Likewise with punctuation. I actually recommend to people generally that in this day and age, when you're not really sending out usually snail mail messages and packages, and maybe it doesn't really matter all that much whether you've got a period at the end of Inc. Or you're just not concerned about the grammatical presentation of it. You really are more concerned about not having dupes and such. One really good way to keep your database relatively normalized is to just say we don't use punctuation in company names. Also, we don't use punctuation in people's names. So if the name in the contact field is John C. Riley, you don't put in John C. period Riley. You just put in John C. Riley, and so then you don't have the C at all. These are all decisions that you make just in terms of your data entry and how you manage the data, that by standardizing will make it much easier for you to find for the Merge Purge wizard to find dupes when it wants to. And again, once you've made the policy decision about what you're going to do, then you want to get into your data and actually make the data conform to the policy decision, and that's what I'm going to show you here. And then lastly, this thing about prefixes, suffixes. Don't put in Mr. for some names and then not put in Mr. for others, or that's sort of an obvious one. A less obvious one is, how do we handle suffixes? If it's junior or senior, do we actually have those in there? Do we keep it in a separate field? If we want to find the duplicates, you want to do that with your duplicate matching in mind. Okay, so let's go over and look at the actual practicalities of, whoops, before I go on to that next one, the actual practicalities of doing that normalization. So I'm going to go ahead and create just a regular report here. Let's go back to Design New here. So we're going to do, I'm just going to pull data in here, and let's grab, I think, phone number and area code, and I think that's all I need. Oh, actually, I did want to pull in also, I think, for the purposes, of talking about, oh, sorry, nope, that's another issue. I'm going to go ahead and say finish. We'll pull this information in. This is just normalizing now on the content of your company field to start with. So let's show those. Actually, you know what? We don't even need to show them. I'm going to go straight to a drill down page. And the reason for that is what I really wanted to do is just take anything that says incorporated in here and change it to say Inc. Now, if in GoldMine, you don't have a tool for doing a thing like this, but of course in Excel you do. Most of you are probably already familiar with the fact that you can go into GoldMine and do a search replace, such as I'm about to do here. Let's go to data, whoops, I'll just go to home. And we'll do find, replace, and we're just going to look for the word incorporated and replace it with Inc. anywhere in the row that we find it. And we want to make sure that we're not looking at the entire cell contents. We're only looking in, and this is something to remember when you do this. And we're just going to do this on the one sheet. And we're going to search by columns. We'll just do it in the current column. And so the key thing here was take off where it by default wants to match the entire cell contents. And then just tell it, go ahead and replace them all. Okay, so it's gone through and it's found 3 of them, changed the full word incorporated to just say Inc. Likewise, you would do that with corporation. You might also do this, by the way, standardize on other words that are part of the company names. American might sometimes show up as AMER period and other times American, or industrial shortened to INDL, or management shortened to MGT, or or manufacturing to shortened to MFG. Whatever it is that you that winds up being a likely, especially a long word that often gets shortened, you either have to decide we always want the full length of the word to be in there, or we always want the abbreviation to be in there. But choose one or the other and make your data conform. Using this method, and essentially you can run a bunch of find replaces against this, and then of course the final MasterMine step on this is, having cleaned all these up and standardized them, now you go to Updater and update your company field. Should be pretty straightforward, just like that, because we're on the company field that chooses company, and update them, and that would normalize all those fields. I would do that with the company field, of course, because that's probably the major field for merge purge purposes. But again, remember, you want to do that probably on the contact field as well, probably on the last name field in GoldMine, as well as on the some of the other ones that you're going to be looking at. Because remember we were talking about the record type field. Where I've got clients and customers and so on, various ways of saying client or customer. We really want to maybe search through here and find all the ones that say client, or and replace those with the word customer. I'll do that with some of these. Now here's a good example of needing to assess it in advance first. So I want to know, well, what are actually all the varieties of client or customer that I have in here? Well, as it turns out, I've actually got some misspellings of client. I've got customer, I've got past client and past customer in here, but really I want all of these to be the same in my GoldMine database. before I go and do my merge purge, right? So let's just take these two that don't say customer and either drill down on them and do individual updater passes on them. If I've got two of them, or in this case, I'll just group them together here into one, just to make it easy for me to drill down, get them all in a list, change the value here to say customer. You've all seen this probably quite a number of times. Make them all say customer, and then do your updater to normalize those. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and update these. And having done that with the customers, I might want to do the same thing with my prospects. I think part of this is that I want to illustrate this, but I also want to kind of get these normalized before I go back and run, or before I go back and talk about them in other contexts. So I'll group those together. Get my group button up here. Make all these say prospect all the way down to the bottom. I'm just right-clicking on the bottom right corner, by the way. Many people don't know this, it does the same thing as dragging that all the way down to the bottom. So I trust that actually I have successfully updated all of these, even though they used to say there were a mix of other values. Now I know they all say prospect because I double-clicked on the bottom right corner there. And when I hit my updater, now it's going to update the record type field. And quickly, I have normalized my record type field. If you need any help with doing this kind of normalization prior to doing your merge purge, of course, we can always help you online working with the MasterMine tools. Okay, so having updated that data, now I can go and refresh my report. And let's go over here and mute the other folks here. Yeah. Carnegie, if you can. There we go. Okay. So that is normalization aspect of this. I want to come back to second set, which is get back on the other screen here. So that normalization obviously is very key, and it will just make that merge purge run so much more smoothly for you and effectively. It ought to reduce, seriously the number of things that actually increase the number of exact matches that you find and reduce the number of fuzzy matches that you have to go back and later find. So that's the normalization. Now, on just other things that you will want to do. This is actually the last set that I'm going to go into here. These are just some other ways to actually sanitize your database, and I'll do as many of these as I can with our remaining time here. So use internal database logic to correct your field contents. So for example, I went through and I did the client, fixing of various forms of the word client in the record type field, but in some cases, your record keeping hasn't been so accurate that they actually say client even though they have purchased from you in the past. So how are you going to fix those? Well, your GoldMine data might indicate, for example, if you've got completed sales in the history tab, you can run a completed sales report in MasterMine and then update that field to indicate that they're clients. Or even better, you could use, and actually, if we have the time here, I'll show you doing this. You could do a last sale report that helps you sort out between ones that are recent clients versus ones that are just past clients. Maybe you only want to count the ones who have purchased from you this year or last year as among clients, and have all the other ones marked past clients, and make sure that if they show up as clients in there but you don't have any sales to them, then maybe get those fixed. All of that can be easily straightened out by using a combination of your last sale report and updater. So that's what I'm saying that's what I mean by using internal database logic to actually correct the contents of certain fields. Secondly would be if you have information that's in your detail records, or in history, or in pending, that's relevant to the merge purge. Examples might be you've got detail records that indicate what, anything demographic about them that might be relevant to the match. It's male or female. Well, male or female you'd probably do a user-defined field. I think I won't go into this too much in detail, except to say sometimes you do have information on your details tab, which you can't choose fields for your weighting that are not at the account level in GoldMine. But it's easy enough with MasterMine and Updater to sort of temporarily move some information from details into a contact level field, into an account level field, so that you can do your merge purge, and then you can decide, well, maybe I'll just have that. I won't actually use that field to display it in GoldMine. I'm only using it for the merge purge purposes. So you can just leave it there, or you can delete it afterwards, or just have it sort of as a throwaway field that you can put information into for the purposes of doing merge purges. So that instance is just, all I'm saying is sometimes you've got information that's not at the account level, move it up there for the merge purge. Third possibility here is really cleaning up the data prior to running the merge purge. By that I mean sometimes you already know, well, I've got a whole lot of records in my database that were imported, and those are junk. We really would just rather not have them in the GoldMine database at all. But in the intervening time between the time we did the import and now, they've sort of become merged in with our live records. And so I don't want to just take every one that has that certain source, or every one that was added in that certain time frame, and delete them all. I need to be a little more careful with that. So what you would do is build a MasterMine report that includes those records, based on, if they were all imported on the same day, use the create on date as a way of isolating them, and then analyze them, break them down in your MasterMine, so that any of them that have subsequently become customers or become more useful records can be put aside, and then all the ones that remain would be ones that you want to delete. So how do you delete those out of GoldMine? Easy enough to take what's left in your MasterMine report, build a GoldMine group against those, and then use your group together with the built-in GoldMine delete records function to simply delete those out of your GoldMine database. That would get rid of, potentially could get rid of hundreds or thousands of records that you would otherwise have to go through one by one in your merge purge process, and they just clog up your system. So get them out of there, get those obvious dupes out of there using a different method than the merge purge prior, and then your merge purge itself would go more smoothly. And then finally, this last one is using your groups or filters cleverly, I say cleverly, to segment the matching targets. So in other words, like I mentioned before, you sometimes want to just build a filter of ones that are suspect matches and have it only do the search within that universe, within that smaller subset of the overall database, so that for example, like I said before, about taking all the ones in a certain area code. If you're confident of the phone numbers, the area codes will can be used to bring them into a smaller universe that you can then do your merge purge with, as opposed to just doing match on company and contact across the entire database, where you already know if they're not in the same area code, you're not going to be interested in them as a possible match. But if they are in the same area code, good chance they are a match, then use your filters more effectively to only look at segments that way. So I hope that I've painted a good enough verbal picture of that works for you. We've only got a few minutes left in our hour here. I've covered a lot of things, some of it very technical and some of it much more broad. I want to give you a chance to post any questions that you want to talk about before I wrap up here and do our usual end user webinar winner. So we will actually still select somebody to get a free GoldMine consultation at the end of this, the free half-hour consultation. for those of you who've stayed on through this, and then I will just we'll just sign off. So, Carnegie, if there are any questions there, let me know. If there are not, then we'll go ahead to the wrap up.
Yeah, I think we could go ahead and go to the wrap up.
Yep. Okay. Great. Let's do that because we've just got a few minutes left here. So let's go to the webinar offer. So once again, for those of you who've stuck with us through the whole thing, we are very appreciative of you taking the time out to talk about in this case Merge Purge and how we can make it work more smoothly for you and effective. Carnegie is actively, no doubt, pulling a name out of a hat as we speak, so why don't I go back to her?
Okay, our winner today is Gary Edge. Congratulations, Gary.
So Gary, congratulations. What you've won is basically a half hour of us working with you on your GoldMine with MasterMine. If you are already a MasterMine user, you can use it, for building MasterMine reports or doing some active data management in there. If you are not already a MasterMine user, we'll install MasterMine prior to the half hour there and make use of it with you. We can do anything that's on the screen there, lead source analysis or last contact by sales rep, whatever is useful for you, and just sort of help you get a grasp on your GoldMine database. Okay, so that's our presentation for today. I will throw up one more slide here just with my contact info. Thank you all once again for taking the time to work with us and talk about data management. If you want to see further examples, or if you want me to go back to a very specific example with you on your own database, by all means, contact me and give us a chance to actually put this into practice with you a little bit more in depth on your own side. When I say on your own side, in your own GoldMine database with your MasterMine tools. It's always fun to work with people one-on-one, actually putting the MasterMine tools to work, making your GoldMine system work better for you. So with that, Carnegie, thank you very much for your support today. We'll look forward to working with you out there in the field. All right, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.